Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Allyson. Allyson, welcome to the show.
Hi, great to be here.
Awesome. Allyson, before we dive in, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background, what you love about marketing, some of your experience, and then we can dive into the conversation for the day.
It's been a wild ride, but and I feel like everyone's kind of had a crazy year. So a little bit about me. I'm the SVP of Marketing and Community at TrustRadius. And TrustRadius is a destination where buyers go to do research and make a confident technology decision. I've kind of grown up in SaaS. My whole career has been in the technology space. I was at a company called LiveRamp before TrustRadius, and I led their integrated marketing for many years. And then I made the leap over to TrustRadius to kind of rebuild the marketing team. So tons of experience across all marketing departments, but I think my heart really lies in content marketing. I think anybody that I interview and they have a content marketing background, it's just so valuable. Whether they're coming from the more demand gen type of content, thought leadership, or product marketing, I think it's just really good to have that background. And it's essentially the lifeblood of any good B2B marketing team.
And especially with your current experience and where you're focused on, I think you're super qualified to talk about the subject today. Really, the voice of the customer, sourcing information and content from customers, how to curate that, how to use it, how to have standards of excellence and quality. You're in such this cool position. We were just talking about it before the podcast, where your content is your product. That is so unique to people, and I think we need to hold ourselves all to that same standard. So I'm curious to dive into what that means to you and your process, not just at your current role, but all of the roles that you've had, how you look at that. So just not to have that be a million questions all in one. Let's start about the voice of the customer. How do you look at content marketing? How does that pair with the voice of the customer? How should we, even get in the right headspace to really utilize and capitalize on voice of the customer in content marketing?
When you're thinking about the voice of the customer, I really think that should be your kind of North Star. Most people, it's really difficult to kind of take that step back of what you want your brand message to be, what you think your product use cases are, how you should describe them. It becomes like you're almost in an echo chamber and a little insular if you're not using voice of the customer to do that. So I talk a lot to our customers and lead my team in terms of a really customer voice, customer-centric way. And we build our messaging, we build our use cases, how we talk about our products, how we go to market is all based on what our customers are saying about us. It's really easy actually for us to do that. It's easier said than done, but at TrustRadius, that's what we do. And so it's great to kind of practice what you preach a little bit to your customers who are looking at their reviews or looking at what customers are saying about them. What are the differentiators that they're highlighting in those reviews? And then how do you essentially infuse that into your organization? I think really world-class organizations are taking that information not only from a marketing standpoint or a sales standpoint, but they're also taking that to their product team, synthesizing a lot of what their customers are saying and giving them that feedback. And you can do that at scale. I think that's kind of like a lot of what our customers with their reviews is at scale with customer voice. I know everyone is kind of chasing down the testimonial, the quote, the this, but if you do like a really good job of generating reviews, you can gather all of that at scale. So I think about it in those kind of buckets where it's like, it's really our North Star. How do we infuse this across the organization? And then how do we do that at scale?
I love that. So you talked about kind of the echo chamber of what we want our brand to be and our voice to be and what we want customers to say about us. And you look at and contrast that with what they're actually saying. What's your process? Which one gives a little bit? Which one should give a little bit? How do you bring that to the forefront of what you're saying and while still driving a specific narrative? How do you incorporate that specifically into who you are and what you say?
one thing that I did when I first started at TrustRadius is I just started talking to a lot of our customers. So this isn't really speaking to the scale part, but it's talking to your customers, and you start to use the same phrases to talk about yourself, or you start to get feedback on that. And then one of my favorite things about my job is that I market to marketers. So I essentially market to myself, which makes it a little bit easier, but maybe harder because they can really sniff through some bad messaging. So I think it's the conversations and being able to start to use some of that repetition, getting your sales team bought into and what they're saying out in market, and getting everybody to kind of start saying the same thing. So I think it's that initial discovery part with your customers and letting that define the message, giving that that guidance. And then you kind of start to crystallize on some of that elevator pitch, or, that headline, that tagline, whatever it is that you're trying to define internally. And then you're giving that to your sales team to go use it out in market. I think a lot of what we do in listening to those calls and getting the feedback from the field, because they're in it every day. I think the more that the marketing team can be involved in that and get exposure to that and be open to the feedback, and knowing that it's not, it's really, I think, out the marketers from a personal standpoint, they're like, this is like a reflection of me. And it's like, you can't take it personally. You just got to get messaging out there, get some feedback, iterate on it. And I think one word that I've been using a lot with our field team, because it can feel, especially in tech, right? Things move so fast. Things feel like they're changing all the time. So one word I've been really using is evolution. I'm like, this is just an evolution of the story. This is an evolution of our messaging. And so I think it's like getting that consistent customer feedback, getting a lot of that, testing it, and then evolving and being okay with that.
Yeah, the one thing I've been able to hang my hat on to be able to, fight some of those fights in my experience has really been, okay, great. You disagree with me. Let's run a test. I love how you brought up testing all the time. I remember once I was like, hey, let's just run this promotion the way I want. And I was like, I guarantee it's going to work. And someone's like, well, I got an idea. And I'm like, fine, I'll test against you. I got crushed, just demolished. And so it was so nice to see the data and see that, because data speaks worlds when it comes to some of those internal debates. But it's nice when your head of marketing is like, hey, voice of the customer wins, tie goes to the customer. When you don't have that, you might need to use the data to kind of get people on board. How do you get customers to speak, and give their voice, give the review, tell the story? How do you pull the emotion out of them and then retell the story? We can't bribe everyone with cookies and Amazon gift cards, and that doesn't get real results. How do we get the voice of the customer going?
Two things that we've done is, one is we've created a platform to showcase the person. So I think one thing that we have to remember in B2B is that we're not selling to a business, we're selling to a person, a buying committee, whatever that may be. When you have these customers, they're people too. They need promotions. They need to look good in front of their boss. And so how can you create a platform for them to showcase all the amazing work that they're doing? And so it's just a frame of reference where you're like, we call it our customer spotlight. They get a huge chunk in our newsletter, and we do a whole social campaign for them. And we put them on this pedestal. We have them come and talk to our entire company at one of our all hands. So we have this whole program that we put into place, and it's become a thing. And then what we did from there is each customer spotlight is essentially an entry for our customer awards program. And it makes it really simple because you have all of these customer stories that fall into, however many categories, and whatever has the best metrics and the best story wins the award. And so it's this whole kind of system where you're this is about a person, the amazing work that they're doing. How do we put them on that pedestal? How do we celebrate them? And you'd be surprised how people obviously love winning things. Who doesn't love to win? But they have an artifact that they can go back into their company and be like, look at this program that I did and how much, it improved our bottom line. And so I think when you give people that opportunity and you think about them as people to really showcase that expertise and the wonderful work that they're doing, you'll have people lining up for sure.
It sounds like less about me telling my own story, but it's really, can I create a platform? And you've created quite a few channels for this. Can I create a platform where I can just amplify my customer story? And because I'm a part of that story, great, I'll get my due with that. But how do I tell their story? Is that kind of how you approach it? Is it really just, I'm going to tell their story completely unaffiliated with me because I am a part of that story? Or how do you kind of sneak your brand in? Like all of us want to move things down funnel, but like, how do you kind of measure the difference there? How do you kind of weigh that out with those stories?
There's always a fine balance between being like overly salesy and promotional versus, hey, here's like the hard metric. So we just created a very like easy template where it's like, hey, what was the business problem? They needed more brand awareness and building brand preference and trust. So what was their goals? What was the execution? Obviously, usually TrustRadius is a piece of that. And then it's just about success metrics. And so you create this very easy template for people and you tie it to a business problem. People are like, wow, okay, that makes sense to me. But when you start with, oh, they use TrustRadius to do that, like it doesn't, you're not really landing it because you're not tying it back to what was their ultimate goal and the business problem that they're trying to solve for.
I love that. So when you're looking at voice of the customer, you've talked about how to source it, how to get them excited, how to amplify it, how to grow it. What are some areas where you typically, you have this unique vantage point of seeing the voice of the customer for a lot of businesses too. Where do people typically fall short? If the voice of the customer is there, what else should they be doing? Like, I'm sure you've seen brands that really embrace that versus others that don't. How can people fix some of those mistakes of not capitalizing on the voice of the customer, even when they have material to use and things like that to lean on?
Yeah, I think what happens internally sometimes is there's like that kind of internal conflict of, hey, we need to push this product line, or we need to hit these targets. Like, why aren't we talking about the product more? Or what happens is there seems to be more of like an internal conflict and misalignment when it comes to messaging and how that gets put out into market. People really, really like to talk about themselves, right? You really like to talk about your product and stuff that's like really bottom funnel and how great you are. But really, if you think about the way buyers buy and the way people make a decision, that's not what's happening at all. So I think about it in a few ways, is that you have almost like a couple layers of messaging, but like think about macro trends that are happening in your industry that you can have an opinion on and that you can have that point of view and put that forward. And that's starting to people to recognize your brand and, oh, they have a POV and like that makes sense. And then you have, okay, great. What are some of the educational pieces that you're creating that obviously the underpinnings are tied to your business in some way, but you're not pushing your product. You're not doing that kind of more typical bottom funnel content. And you're starting to get people that are like maybe aware. They don't even know that they have a problem in the first place. They don't want to hear about your product. And so when you start to build that problem, you're tying yourself to thought leadership, you're tying yourself to education. Then when they're more of that bottom funnel, they're trying to make a decision. That's when your customer voice can come into play really well, because they're talking about your product. They're talking about all the use cases. They're talking about why they picked you over maybe a different technology in the space. And so when we think about even like all of our customers at TrustRadius, when they come to us, they're thinking about in-market buyers. But if you really want to think of a full funnel strategy or a full buyer's journey, you have to be thinking about the other parts when they're just maybe, they don't even know they have a problem in the first place. And so I think that people fall short with customer voice is because they're just like, oh, I just need to push this product message. If they just knew my product did this, this, and this, like the world would open up and pipeline would be no problem. But that's not the way people think. And that's not how they're motivated. So I think that's where people really fall short, is they go straight for like the jugular and product information versus kind of setting that up and setting their brand as this kind of thought leader in whatever industry, and then using customer voice to really reinforce that.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's so much noise out there. with these different brands. And so many people have had the experience of trying softwares or working with businesses where it didn't provide enough value. And the brands that are actually solving your problems before you ever have to buy through their content, there's an immediate level of trust because they're already doing something that most of the pain solutions that you worked with have never been able to do. And they're giving this stuff away for free. Well, they must have a really cool solution. Let me dig in, and go for it. So I love that. Well, I've got a million other questions, but again, our episode length is short on purpose and it's a nice snack size. I'll have to come back and ask more questions at another time. Hopefully we can get you on an episode again. But Allyson, thank you for the time. This is awesome. I think this is a great kind of reminder that the voice of the customer should trump kind of the internal opinions and things like that. Let's make sure we're doing that. And this is a great reminder of how to actually source and work through that and build that out as a business. So thank you so much for the insights, for the time and information. If anyone wants to connect with you online and continue the conversation, what's the best place to reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. Always love to hear different opinions and get feedback there. And then obviously check out TrustRadius.com. There's a lot of really great customer voice content there.
I love it. Thank you again for the time and appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.